It's the 1980 Daytona 500, and Cliff Champion is changing front tires for Buddy Baker. Buddy won that day, the most prestigious race NASCAR has to offer. He and Cliff and everybody else on that team were on top of the world. Over the course of the coming decade, Cliff Champion worked for several different teams. There were other wins, but something, somewhere, was missing. And then Cliff hit rock bottom. Working in NASCAR is a lifestyle. 1 week you're on one coast and the next you're on the other. No, seriously. I once caught a foul ball on the fly at a Dodgers game in Los Angeles, California, and another, again on the fly, at a minor league game in Richmond, Virginia, the very next week. Yet for every moment like that, there are 10 more spent looking at the four corners of a lonely hotel room. Cliff Champion knew the drill. He'd experienced it. He'd lived it.
Yeah. I was busy racing. I mean, people don't realize how involved you got in racing back then. I mean, you were running full-time all the time. There wasn't as many people in the shop. You were working late at night and stuff. I mean, when I was working over at Copenhagen team, I went to the bank one day, and I asked the lady, I said, what's the date today? I said, what's the date? She goes, 23rd. I said, no, what's the date? She says, Monday. I said, Lee, what month is this? I didn't know. I didn't have a clue what month it is. You know, when you're racing that hard, instead of you don't know who the governor is, you don't know who the president is, you don't know who anybody is. You're just, you know where you're going to be next week. You're going to be at the racetrack. And all of y'all know that as you're going along, I mean, everything you relate to. When did you get married? Well, let's see. It was, we got married in between the break between Daytona and hey, that everything relates to between this week and that week of what racetrack it is. And that's what you don't know what month it was. They said, well, was it the fall race? It was a spring race, so it must have been May. You know, that's the only way you know.
Benny Parsons won the final race of his Winston Cup career in the spring of 1984 at Atlanta, with Cliff calling the shots from pit road as his crew chief.
But it was strange because we won the race at Atlanta and we left out and stopped at the Red Lobster coming up from the racetrack right there, carried the trophy in and set it in the middle of the table and ate dinner at the Red Lobster right there. You get home and all the guys' wives meet you at the shop. And I didn't have anybody. So they all meet and I just kind of sitting there by myself and I drive home, walk in the house. It's dark, you know, quiet. Turn on the TV, you know, sit there, you know, by then it's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and you're sitting there, won the race today. Guess I'll watch another TV show. And there was no, winning the race is fun, but when there's nobody to share it with, it's almost like a tree falling in the forest. There's nobody to hear it. Did it really happen? It was the same kind of a thing. So I realized then that relationships were something else because you work your whole life, and I'd been to Victory Circle with other drivers. This is the first one that I was crew chief for. It was my first, you know, big win right there. And then it was like, it seemed like no big deal. Is this all it is?
Other jobs in the sport came and went, as did a marriage.
And life just got tough right there. Like I said, I didn't realize how bad it was, and she just announced she was leaving. So without having a wife or a job or, you know, having anything right there to hold on to, I went to those dark places that you do, you know, and a lot of people don't realize, you know, it happens at night, you know, and most of your suicide attempts, things like that are late in the hours because when the sun comes up, it's a pretty day the next day and you got hope. I mean, it's like when you don't have a job and you say, I'll find me a job today. But at the end of the day, you're like, man, I still don't have a job, you know, and you go back into that dark hole again.
Cliff twice attempted suicide in rapid succession in late 1992, and then a final time during the Christmas holiday season.
One of the guys in racing, a couple of guys in racing lived in my neighborhood. Gary Brooks, a good friend, lived across the street from me over there, just maybe 2 houses across the street from me over there, and Johnny Bruce.
Yeah.
JB that worked for U.S. Tobacco that I worked with when I was at Benny Parsons, he lived around the corner. And I had gone in the house and I took 2 bottles of sleeping pills and somebody gave me a bottle of Captain Morgan's rum and I washed it down with that and went to bed with the intent of never waking up. And the next morning, I guess Gary had seen my truck in the driveway, and everybody knew I was in bad shape, mentally in bad state. So Gary knocked on the door, no answer. So he called JB, and he said, I think we need to get him out of there. So they called the police, and they came. When they broke the door down, they said that I walked around the corner, stark naked with the eyes rolled back in my head. Said all you could see was the whites of your eyes. And I don't remember any of it. But I guess it was all the pills and stuff that had such an effect on me. And they took me to the hospital. I was there for, must have been like Sunday. And I think they said I was in a coma until Tuesday afternoon.
Eventually, Phil Parsons called with a job offer. And shortly thereafter, things started to very slowly turn around.
The first day at work, I told Phil, I said, look, Phil, I said, man, I need to talk to somebody. I said, I ain't doing real well. I said, yeah, I'm not so stupid. I said, I've tried 3 times. The first time I wanted to kill myself. The second time I was crying out for help. And the third time I was trying to kill myself. I said, so sooner or later, I'm going to succeed. I'm not so stupid. You know, I'll get it right sooner or later. And he told me, he said, I know who you need to talk to. And he put me in touch with Max Helton over at Motor Racing Outreach, which did all the chapel services at the racetrack and everything. But to me, that stuff was for people that were weak and couldn't handle it. Before, you know, that's why I always thought about it, you know. I wasn't against it, wasn't for it. You know, I had no feelings about it. And anyway, I talked to Max, and he invited me to their retreat that happened about a week later. At the end of the season, they'd go to Hilton Head, and Bobby Hillen let me go down a room with him. His wife stayed home, so I rode down and stayed with him. And the first day there, I heard the speakers, and I'm telling you, I tell people, I said, you know, racers, we don't believe anything unless we see it. I mean, somebody can come to you and said, hey, you try this spoiler on your car, and this rear spoiler, and it's going to pick you up 0.2 of a second. Like, I'll log that back, but I'm not going to believe it until I try it and see it. And I tell them, I said, you know, that first day, they had some of the best speakers down there. And I said, I'll be honest with you. I said, I didn't see God. I said, I didn't talk to him, nothing like that. But I heard these guys, and the feeling, I said, I came here not only wanting to die, but trying to die, crawling around on the floor, trying to die. And I left here jumping up and down with joy.
Life was still not perfect, but now Cliff Champion had a faith on which he could lean day in and day out.
It's not a magic pill. I mean, it doesn't all of a sudden all your life is rosy, but what it does is it gives you the strength and tools to get through the other things.
Right.
I mean, there were some rough times, but I'm telling you, God and the Holy Spirit have their hand in your life. When I was working for Phil, there'd still be some tough times. I remember one night I crouched down behind the race car. I'd just stay at work because I had no place to go, nothing to go home to. It said to be 10:30 at night. I remember especially one night I'm kneeled down behind the race car, just crying. I said, God, this is tough and everything. I don't care anymore. You know, it's hard. And all of a sudden the phone would ring, 10:30 at night, and it'd be Lake Speed.
Huh.
He'd say, Cliff, I don't know what you got going on, but God told me to call you. And it lifts you right back up. And that happened several times.
My name is Rick Houston, and all of us at one time or another have hit rock bottom. If you're in that kind of dark place right now, there is hope waiting for you on the other side. Please seek help by texting or calling 988 or by texting HOME to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor.